I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to stay down. All right.
Well, I figure his approval rating. I mean, yeah, I imagined it was going to go up, like just because there are more people probably willing to say that they're Trump supporters now. Like
Why?
I feel like before the election, a lot of Trump supporters weren't gonna go on record and say that they were Trump supporters.
I think you're right. Before the election of 2016.
No, I think before this election too. Like, if you ask them, like that's why all the polling data is always so freaking off regarding him. Is because a lot of his supporters aren't willing to come out and say that they support him.
There is,
but why though?
Yeah, but here's the thing. The polling was. I will stand by the polling in 2016 was pretty darn on. Like Hillary Clinton.
Way off. It was like 10 points off on every poll.
Yeah, it was. It had Hillary winning in every possible way.
You need to read the polls again. They were like 10 points off everywhere.
No. Nathan, your video is frozen.
Yes.
Which election are you talking about? Are you talking about the election? No, not in 2016. Not in 2016. Let me talk because you're wrong. In 2016, the national poll average the day before the election had Hillary Clinton winning the national, the popular vote by 3 points. She wound up winning by 2 points. That's 1 point off. That's not 10 points off. In several key states, it was off by maybe 4 to 5 points. In Wisconsin, she was supposed to win by 5. She lost by 0.1. Right, but in 2020, there were some polls that were what's going on here. What was that face for?
You're frozen. You have no video.
Well, but you can hear me, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm gonna restart my computer.
Okay.
But you can hear me. So I'm saying that the polling in 2016 was not that far off. Now, the fact is it was off in the wrong direction to where it called the winner wrong. Yes. But by percentage points, it wasn't that far off. By percentage points in 2020, it's the opposite. It called the winner right, but it was off by a lot more points, especially in several key states like Wisconsin, where there were some polls where he was up by 10 and he only won by 1. That's 9 points off. It did call the election right, but it was off in the percentage. There was never a point where the polls were off by 10 points in the popular vote, national popular vote, in either election.
I'm not talking about the popular vote. I'm talking about the freaking actual the results of what actually freaking happened.
Yeah, because Hillary won the popular vote, but Trump won the election.
Right. He won the election by winning 3 states by less than 0.5 percentage points in each state. So there was only 70 votes wrong.
And all those states, all the polls had her crushing him.
No, they did not. They had her beating him, yes. But if you go back and look at those states, and in fact, I'll pull this up. RCP, let's do Wisconsin. That's one of the 3, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania.
This is why I don't bother trusting polls anyway.
Why? They have a margin of error for a reason.
Yeah, which means they shouldn't be trusted, period. No one should trust polls, ever.
Because they have a margin of error?
Yes.
No, because they're stupid.
Because
they're not accurate.
And their margin of error is huge.
Their margin of error is completely dependent on whether or not people answer honestly.
And also their margin of error is so big that it's big enough to be able to say, oh, it could be this person, actually it's this person.
Literally any margin of error could do that. Like if you have a margin of error of 0.1%, and one person's up by 0.05% and the other person wins by 0.03%, that margin of error of 0.1% would allow for you to do that.
Yeah, but their margin of error is freaking 3.
Perfect medium, but people have way over-exaggerated how wrong they were. They were wrong within the margin of error in 2016, which did flip the election because the error went in one direction. In 2020, there was one state that was outside the margin of error, which was Wisconsin, but 49 out of 50 states were correctly called within the margin of error, and it called the national popular vote winner and the electoral college winner correctly. So you have to take them with a grain of salt, but they're not just wholly wrong. They are wrong within a realm of error, and the reason there's that error isn't because people say like lie to polls. They have actually done studies. The shy Trump vote is not a thing, and I guarantee you, shy Nikki Haley voter will definitely not be a thing, because that will be an entirely different demographic. But the reason they're off is because you literally cannot poll the entire 350 million person population of the United States. So what you have to do is you poll like 10,000 people, and you have to weight the demographics of it, and you cannot perfectly weight that based on a 10,000 person poll. But it's not because people lie to the polls, it's because that there is a natural margin of error. See, the whole thing about the polls being wrong is a Trump talking point, and he's lying, or more likely wrong, because he's a dumbass.
Nah, polls are completely useless and nobody should trust them.
I mean, sure, whatever. Let's talk about horror.
I was waiting for Nathan to finish so I could add one thing to his statement.
What's the?
If I may.
Go ahead.
Here's the thing, okay? And I think Nathan understands this, but I don't think he's communicating it, at least. I don't know. Maybe he's not. I don't know. Here's the thing. The problem with relying on this on margin of errors for like understanding this, and like Nathan's exactly right in the idea of like look at within the margin of error. The thing is, expecting the public to look at the margin of error is like expecting people to read the fine print.
Oh yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, what the problem isn't the polling. The problem is people's perception of the polling, because they just want to know who is in the lead, and that's all they care about, because that's all that they want. That's the digestible bit of the media,
right.
of what of the information they're getting. So, this is why I always tell my students, like, this is why statistics is the most important math that no one ever takes. It's important to understand these concepts, and so this is why I don't like polling, is that it kind of feeds off of that illusion for sort of a clickbaity headline, kind of like we were talking about earlier. It's clickbait. It's saying, hey, this is the thing. This is the finer details that you can probably just skim over because you don't really need to understand it to understand what we're saying overall. But that does a disservice, and it creates this issue with polling in the first place.
But the thing is, like, some information is better than no information, and there isn't an alternative to polling. Yes, polling isn't wholly right. There are issues with it, but the solution isn't to just like throw polling out, because then you have nothing. So what you have to do is stand. No. So some information is better than no information. Your solution is to have
that information. We, the public, we don't need that information. You know who needs that information? The people running for office. We don't need to know that Joe Biden's 20 points up, because you know what that's going to do? That means I'm gonna not vote because he's got it in the bag.
That's the thing. That's not the thing. So he, first of all, was never 20 points up. I know that
I'm exaggerating, Nathan, for prove my point. Right. The point I'm trying to make is that people see the polls and say, "Oh, Joe Biden's ahead. I don't need to go out and vote." And don't tell me that doesn't happen, because I literally watched it happen both times.
Also in the primaries.
The solution to that is to tell people, hey, if you see that Joe Biden's up by 10 points, that means it's including you. And if you don't vote, then that 10 points is now minus one person. And if a bunch of people do that, it's minus a bunch of people. So they only are accurate to
and you know what they're going to say? And you know what they're going to say to that? You know what they're going to say to that? Hey, you want Chipotle?
What?
You know what they're going to tell me? That they're going to say, hey, Sean, you want Chipotle? They don't care.
I don't know what that means.
It goes right over their head. It goes right over their head. They don't care about any of that.
Yeah, I don't get
the point I'm trying to make. If I tell them, hey, this is accounting for you, blah, 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 they don't care. All they see is, oh, he's up. I don't need to go.
True, they do that.
And to quote,
you're coming from the point of view of an educated person. You need to understand, like, the majority of this country is woefully undereducated.
Right, and the solution isn't to educate them less. But here, to quote my high school statistics teacher, he said, if my lady friend yells at me once out of every 30 days when I wake up, that's only, what's that percentage, Jim? 1 out of 30.
3%.
1 out of 30.
3% chance of that happening. I'm not surprised when she yells at me. So even though that's a very unlikely scenario, it's not surprising when it happens, because it does happen. Happens 1 out of 30 days. It doesn't happen 0 out of 30 days.
I don't get it. What's the point?
So people, poll aggregator sites, right? They say that there is, they gave Trump a 30% chance of winning in 2016. that means that 1 out of 3 times he will win the election. So since he won the election, people are like, oh, the polls were all wrong. They said she had a 70% chance of winning. 70% chance is not a 100% chance.
Oh, yeah. Well, duh.
But people don't understand that. People will.
I know.
People will say,
yes, exactly. They don't care about numbers. They care about results. You're arguing against human nature.
No, I'm not arguing against human nature because you don't do the polls based on the stupidest people in the population, because you can't control the stupidest people in the population. You do the polls so that we have some information rather than no information.
So to summarize, what we're hearing here is that Nathan is arguing that the issue needs to be fixed by bettering the understanding of the public on what these polls mean, while Sean is saying play to the strengths and weaknesses and say, hey, here's what you need to understand based on the fact that you're not going to go out and look for information. And if you give people information that they think is summarized and then proves to be wrong, they're not going to understand why it was wrong. So we have this issue of giving people what they need to understand what they're going to want, what they're going to seek out, rather than saying, here is what you should have understood, here is what you need to make sure you understand. It's giving them homework that they're not going to want. As someone who gives people homework that they don't want, I can understand both sides of this situation very clearly.